this is an interesting day with respect to your first book, in as much as the National Health Service in Britain announced just a few hours ago, we're recording this on the Tuesday, that the National Health Service will no longer distribute puberty blockers to children or to prepubescent children. Will restrict them to tightly controlled and monitored clinical trial studies. Now that's quite a moment, even as in the United States, the industry of blocking puberty in children is galumphing forward and backed by every single major group, including the White House. How do you feel about that news, Abigail?
I think it's fantastic news. I think this is, people have been asking me for a while, are things turning? Are they turning back? This is a major step forward. It really is. And kudos to everyone who participated and bringing to light all the harms of puberty blockers. These really never should have been given to kids, and certainly not pushed on parents. Their arms were twisted. They were told that they could have a dead child on their hands if they didn't consent to this. It was really pushed in the ugliest terms, and the horrifying side effects of these drugs really should have stopped everyone in their tracks. So I think it's wonderful.
This is not to say, of course, that the National Health Service is giving up on treating children with gender dysphoria, that we're going back to a more traditional way of treating them, which is right. Mental health therapy with counseling, with talking it through, with getting to the root of what's going on, protecting them. I think it's kind of a very important thing for us to say, and I feel that when we are attempting to stop things like puberty blockers, it is not because we are attacking trans children or attacking trans people, let alone attacking LGBTQ plus people. We're defending them. We're defending children from unregulated experiments with no clinical trials to back them and no real evidence that they improve or don't or hurt a child's self-esteem and self-understanding and appease their dysphoria. And I think that's kind of an important thing to say, right? We don't want to be in this habit of dismissing the needs and traumas of young gender dysphoric kids.
I mean, I'm sort of two minds about it. On the one hand, I think it's a shame that we have to say that every time, right? Because this is a drug with serious side effects in terms of bone development. Why should it matter who it's going into? What the identity of the child? These are dangerous drugs. And of course, we don't want any child, regardless of sexual orientation eventually or anything else. We don't want any child to be put on something dangerous that has very, scant proven benefits and all these horrifying harms. And it's a shame that they have us all back on our heels. And look, I do it too. Every time I go on, I say I'm not, of course I, support the rights of transgender adults But it's a shame that we have to disclaim, we have to constantly give these disclaimers because we're so defensive.
The reason I do it is because I want to make sure that if someone trans is listening, not the doctors, not the activists, but just to realize that this is not coming from a place of prejudice or hostility. It really isn't. And I spent my life defending transgender people and their right to be who they are and to be free from discrimination. I regard it as a huge triumph that we got the Supreme Court to defend transgender rights in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, something that no one ever mentions, but nonetheless has happened. So for me, it's not about positioning myself. It's about just making sure that people who are listening to me realize I'm not coming from a hostile place. I'm really not.
Yes. I mean, I understand that. I really do. I
also understand your frustration, Abigail, because
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
Because these are horrifying. They really are. I mean, you're talking about now brittle bones, teeth splitting. I mean, diminished peak IQ. Who cares what children you're putting this in? They don't belong in any child.
Well, I think the neurological stuff and the brain stuff is the most concerning because when you actually you're preventing a child from growing up. You're putting them in a sort of a cryogenesis in a way, in which they're entirely frozen in place. Now, of course, if you interrupt that process, you're going to have effects in the brain, in the body, in the bones, in all sorts of other places. Now, they have used these for premature, what they call premature puberty, for kids who go into puberty very young, and they do it to just so they get to normal age of puberty. So they're trying to, there's a distinction here between actually attempting to get the child back to normal functioning and as opposed to alter them dramatically.
Right. I mean, that's a situation where a child is not, has a problem, meaning premature puberty. Things aren't operating properly in their bodies. So we go in and we give them these blockers in order to slow things down so you don't want a 4-year-old with full breasts,